Gas Station Log. It is August 15th, 2018. So I woke up and I'm just, drinking my tea and getting ready to go to work. And I was thinking about this post that I made last night about how Christian music is some of the most uncreative music that's out there. Wow, all of a sudden my head started filling with things that I want to talk about. So I've got a lot to talk about today. Let's go rock the gas station. Gas Station Log. Hey buddies, I just got to work and I got my lunch with me today. Last night I posted this video that I found on YouTube, and I shared it because I have finally found someone who agrees with me on the state of the Christian music industry. It's story time with Stevig again, and this could become a very long, drawn-out story. I will try to keep it as brief as possible. In the 90s, Christian music went from being an alternative to mainstream music, a bad alternative most of the time. I remember sitting there in 1994 thinking, why can't Christian music be as awesome as Metallica or Soundgarden or Pearl Jam? But it just isn't. And then in like 95, 96, bands like DC Talk and the Newsboys came out with stuff that was just as good as mainstream alternatives. And then I remember in 97, this band came out of Seattle, this Christian band called Grandma Train, and they were just as good as Load era Metallica, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains all rolled up into one. They were amazing. And then by that point I had started to get into like the punk ska thing that was raving the late 90s. And I'm still into it because it's awesome. And I was finding that with the exception of like 2 Christian bands, there wasn't enough of it. Oh, sure, I found lots of different Christian punk bands. They were supposed to be Christian, but their music sucked. And so I'm like, you know what? It's better to go listen to Screeching Weasel and Green Day than it is to listen to 90 Pound Wuss or Officer Negative. So that's what I did. And I got back into mainstream music. And over the years, in the early 2000s, I was into all kinds of mainstream music that was brilliant. And I wasn't even aware that Christian music was doing anything because I kind of wasn't really in those circles. And then in 2006, as you've heard me say before, I gave my life completely over to Jesus. And wouldn't you know it, it just happened to be during a season in 2006 where they are remastering the original series of Star Trek and making it look awesome with modern effects, trying not to take away from the feel of the original show. They're just trying to spice it up and make it look awesome, and they did. And I was, every Saturday night, I got off of work at the Ashland House at the Best Western, and I would come home, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, it would be on. And of course, I'm a night owl, so I would get home, usually from having a couple of beers with my friends at the bar, and I would come home, and 1 o'clock, it's Star Trek time. During this, because it was 1 o'clock in the morning, they would often show a lot of like dumb infomercial kind of commercials. Nothing that actually is important or relevant to you because it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember seeing 2 specific commercials that just turned in my stomach. One was for a CD of Christian worship music, and the way the commercial was put together, it made it sound like if you wanted to be cool and worship God the cool need to get this CD. It's like, yeah, let's stay on stage and play acoustic guitar and not do anything cool or risky. Let's just play it safe and sing songs that I just thought, this is lame. It's making a mockery of worshiping Jesus as King of the universe. And then, on top of that, there was another commercial for Three Wooden Crosses, the 17 songs of basically country artists singing songs that may or may not have anything to do with God or the real Jesus or the truth of the Bible, but we're going to throw them all on here under the banner of Three Wooden Crosses by Randy Travis. It seemed like it was an attempt to market Christian music to a different audience. And I just remember how disgusted I was at the prospect of Tim McGraw singing "To Live Like You Were Dying" represented the truth of Jesus in the Bible. It's crap. Absolute crap. I would have taken a steaming pile right on top of it, and it might have cleaned it up. And over the years, I have noticed that all the Christian music that you tend to hear out there, it all sounds the same to me. It all sounds like industry polished pop rock or pop music. But by 2012, 2013, I'd basically I was playing in the band at the church I was going to at the time, and so to me, that was my job. And so my job was playing these songs, and I had the freedom to basically write my own parts to it. God forbid you play the song exactly the way that it plays on the radio, because that's boring, You are not those guys. You should bring something slightly different to the table. And thankfully I had the freedom to do so. And so I set aside all of my indignation for the Christian music industry, because it's a machine designed to mass produce mainstream music that appeals to Christians. I just, put it aside, and I'm like, okay, well, it's my job to play these songs, so I'm going to do it to the glory of God. And so I didn't really think about it. It's like, whatever, okay, eventually, after a couple of years, the leader of that whole enterprise stepped down, and so that ceased being a thing that I was able to do. So I just kind of went back to my ordinary life. Again, I just kind of turned off Christian music. In fact, there was nothing in mainstream music that I found interesting either, so I turned that off too. And I basically listened to orchestral music, opera, and Star Trek music. And video game music. So that's where I'm at this point. Fast forward to 2015, I moved down here to Kentucky and am introduced to a whole new realm of, this is what's going on in Christian music today. And maybe it's a little bit better than it has been over the years, but it's still mass-produced, manufactured, and it all sounds the same, and it's boring to me. But again, I dismiss it because we're involved in Celebrate Recovery, and we play a lot of those songs. And there are some good songs in there. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying, in general, as a whole, the Christian music industry is exactly that. It is an industry, the mass-produced ear candy that appeals to Christians. And then came along Jesus culture. It annoys me to absolutely no end that you sing the same line over and over 14 to 28 times in a song for 3 minutes, and you call that a song. You call that a worship thing? No, you don't understand what worship is. It's monotonous, and it's annoying and irritating, and not to mention, I did some digging and discovered some shocking information about Bethel Church and Hillsong and stuff like that they believe and they teach and they train leaders in heretical crap that is not biblical. For example, driving around, being on tour. Oh, there's a cornfield. Look, let's pull over on the side of the road, blow a shofar. And for people that don't know what a shofar is, a shofar was the kind of horn that that they would blow in Israel to summon people to worship at the temple. So you pull over to the side of the road, you blow a shofar and say, "Wakey, wakey," thinking that you're trying to awaken angels to come do the will of God. Where in the world did you get that nonsense idea? Not from the Bible. I'm not going to get into the whole Bethel Church Hillsong nonsense that they spew, but bottom line is Christian music. So yeah, that's basically why I don't listen to a lot of it. What I do listen to, I mainly listen to for nostalgia factors. For me, good theology has always been at the forefront of what I want in Christian music. If the theology that's being expressed in Christian music is wrong, I'm quick to notice it. I also believe that worshiping Jesus is not meant to be an emotional high. Worshiping with your life should express that by obedience and loyalty. I think it's fair to say that Jesus would say, "Because if you love me, you'll obey my commandments." Live your life in such a way that it is worship. You don't need to put on some elaborate show to worship me. I want to be worshipped in spirit and in truth. It doesn't need to be some big show. The point of worship is not to get an emotional experience. Now, we pour ourselves out because of what we know about His glory and His majesty and His grace and the power that He has to save people. When people go to a worship service and it looks like a rock concert and the same kinds of things happen at a worship service that happen at a rock concert, there might be a problem with that. This thought literally just occurred to me. A worship service should not. We have to be very careful, because when a worship service looks like a rock concert, we have to be very careful that the worship service points us to Jesus, not to our emotions about Jesus. Because our emotions about Jesus and Jesus are two very different things. And if a worship service points us to our feelings and emotions about Jesus, "Oh, I love this song, it makes me love Jesus so much," that's idolatry. Please don't go there. We have to be very careful. That's why sometimes the best way to worship Jesus is with hymn books. Because there's nothing to distract you from Jesus. There's no loud guitars. There's no sweeping emotional songs that sweep you up in your emotions so that you confuse your emotions for Jesus and Jesus. We have to be very careful. While I'm on the subject of idolatry, so some things that I have noticed over the years that I have problems with in some churches I've come across, not necessarily in any particular kind of church. I've just noticed that there are people out there that believe some really whack things. For example, I've come across people online, and the internet is a great place for people like this to fester. People that want to criticize everything, people that want to create their own biblical ideas of how things work. Let me tell you something. As somebody who is called to be a prophet of Christ and true to the Bible in every way possible, I know what being a prophet is all about. God has been teaching me what it means to be a prophet for the last 10 years. And there's a lot more to it than I ever thought, and there's a lot more to it than most people think. And a lot of people, they believe that they don't have a strong biblical foundation on how spiritual gifts work. Like I've actually found Facebook groups of people with the gift of prophecy. And what are they doing? They're practicing and honing their skill at prophesying. Now, the problem with that is look, well, for one thing, Jesus came to me one day and he told me straight up, that's not how it works. If you have the gift of prophecy, or if you are a prophet, it means that your gift is the open connection and communication that you have with God. For Him to speak directly to you, and sometimes for Him to give you a prophetic word about people or things. That is the gift. It is the open line communication with God. It is, you cannot practice it or hone it. It is not a skill to be mastered. It is an open line communication, because prophecy, by definition, are the very words of God, and only God can utter them, and you do not manipulate God. And everything that I'm going to say, you need to understand that God is not your genie. He does not do things because you want Him to do them. He does not cater to your whims. He is God. There is none like Him. And we're not even on the same level as Him. Even as Christians, redeemed by the blood of Christ and given His righteousness, we are still not on the same level as He is. Because He is omniscient, He is omnipotent, and we are not. So with that being said, Jesus basically told me straight up, these were His words, that is not how prophecy works. You don't hone it, you don't train it, it's not a skill to be mastered. What those people are doing is, he used the word bibliomancy, which is essentially sorcery and witchcraft, using the Bible as your means. Now let me explain what a couple of those things looks like. Number one, as I stated, if you're trying to hone your skill at prophesying, look, I used to read tarot cards before I submitted myself to God and was in submission to God. I still had the gift of prophecy and still had that open line to God, which I could misuse. I used to read tarot cards, which is witchcraft and sorcery. I was good at it. I literally used the cards as a tool to hone my sense of intuition about people. But that doesn't change the fact that it's sorcery and witchcraft. And if you are trying to practice and hone your sense of intuition for what God says about people, you can do that. But it's evil and it's wicked. Another thing that just gets my goat is Christians who plead the blood. And the problem that I have with it is, yes, there is power in the blood of Jesus. But you don't, when you're praying for somebody, there's only one way I've ever heard this term applied. And it's when you're praying for somebody and you say, I plead the blood that you be healed, or something like that. The problem with it is you're turning the blood of Christ into a magic word, like a summons. You're summoning the power of the blood of Christ And that's not how the blood of Christ works. What you're doing by pleading the blood is you are turning the blood of Jesus into an incantation. That you're summoning the power of blood. That's not how you do it. If we want somebody to be healed, we pray that God in His grace and His power will heal them. We do not have the power to heal. The apostles did not have the power to heal. They were merely the conduit in which they asked God to heal them. But you don't need to use I plead the blood as if it's an incantation or a magic word, because then you're practicing sorcery, and you're not just asking, and you're not just praying that God would heal them. You're trying to usurp that power for yourself, and that is not how it works. And I apologize, I've said a lot of controversial things today. I'm sure I popped a lot of people's bubbles, and I apologize. I just want you to walk in the truth. Grace and peace, brothers. 4 o'clock. I've been thinking about other things, but then this random thought back about the Christian music thing came up, and it's another concern that I have is I get on Facebook, and yes, while I see lots of people sharing memes of Bible verses, that's great. I love that you're doing that. But at the same time, I'm also starting to see another trend which I'm a little concerned about. And it's the trend that a lot of people are posting memes, and they're showing me that they're finding their strength and their security in Christian music lyrics. So yeah, people are sharing Christian music lyrics around as if it's gospel truth. There may be some gospel truth in it, but you can't always expect there to be. It basically shows me that instead of digging through the Bible for gospel truth and truth about God, they just turn on Christian radio and they let Christian radio feed them what they think is the Bible. And that's dangerous, because in a lot of Christian music there's a lot of unbiblical ideas floating around, and you can't just assume that all Christian radio is going to be biblical and it is going to build you up in the knowledge of the truth of God. Yay, buddies! Good buddies! Well, it's 7:23. It's almost time to go, buddies! Yay, buddies! Mew, mew, mew. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home, buddies. Yay, buddies! I'm in my box! I like it in my box. Yay, box! My happy box. Yay, buddies! Okay. Bye-bye.